This is example 4 from section 10.1. So when we see a fraction equation, we first want to find the least common denominator or the least common multiple of the denominators. And there are a couple ways to do that. You could kind of do it in your head and decide what is the smallest multiple where they line up, or you can list out the multiples. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. And then the next denominator is 10, so 10, 20. And then the last denominator is 20. So we get 20, and the least common denominator is the least multiple where they all line up, so 20. So after we find the least common denominator, we want to multiply by it. So we're going to multiply this whole equation by 20. And since we have fractions, I'm going to write it as 20 over 1. Then I want to rewrite 20 over 1 distributed to each fraction. Okay, so that's just the fraction 20 over 1 distributed to each of the three fractions on that equation and distributed to both sides of the equation. Okay, so now I'm actually going to rewrite it one more time. Instead of 20 over 1 and y plus 1 over 4, I'm going to write that as 20 over 4. So putting the 20 and the 4 in one fraction. And then I'm going to put the y plus 1 by itself. Plus 20 over 10, and then I'm going to put the y minus 2 by itself, equals 20 over 20. And then I'm going to put the y plus 7 by itself. The reason I rewrote this step, which we hadn't done in class, is I think it helps to reduce these fractions when the numbers are in the same fraction. So I just put the 4 and the 10 and the 20 in the denominator of the fraction with the 20 over 1, just to show the reducing a little bit easier. So now 20 over 4, or 20 divided by 4, is going to reduce to 5 over 1, which is just 5. 20 over 10, or 20 divided by 10, is 2, so this reduces to 2 over 1, which I'm going to write as 2. 20 over 20, 20 divided by 20 is 1, so that's just 1 over 1. I'm just going to write that as 1, and then rewrite the rest. So what we did by multiplying by that 20 over 1 is we cleared the fractions out of the equation. So 20 was the smallest number we could have multiplied by that was going to clear out all of those fractions. And now we just keep solving. So we can distribute the numbers in front of each parentheses to the whole parentheses. So 5 times y plus 1 is 5y plus 5, plus 2, y minus 2, if we distribute, would be 2y. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4, equals 1 times y plus 1, or y plus 7. 1 times y is just 1y, or y. 1 times 7 is 7. And now we have a much more normal looking equation. So the first thing we're going to try to do now that we've distributed is we're going to try to combine like terms. That means we're going to combine things on the same side of the equal sign. So I'm going to just draw a little line through the equal sign. We can combine things together on the left and we can combine things together on the right, but we can't combine the left with the right just yet. So let's work on the left right now. We can combine 5y plus 2y. 5 plus 2 is 7, so that gives us 7y. and we can combine 5 and negative 4. 5 minus 4 is positive 1. Okay, now we've combined the left side of the equal sign. On the right side, there's nothing to combine, so we're just going to rewrite y plus 7. Okay. My equation's kind of spaced out, so I'm going to rewrite it one more time. 7y plus 1 equals y plus 7. Now that we've combined like terms, in this step, now we can move the variables. Since we have variables on both sides, we have y's on the left and y's on the right, we're going to move the y's. And I usually like to move the smaller number, so right now this is 1y, so I'm going to subtract 1y from both sides. That would give us 6y plus 1 equals 7. And now that I have all of my y's together, now we can move this number, 1, and get 6y equals 6. And then last step is to divide by 6 on both sides and get y equals 1. Let's do one more fraction example that we didn't do in class just because these are a little bit tricky. So we start 3y over 2 plus y over 6 equals 10 over 3, and we want to find the least common denominator. We can do that by listing out multiples of the denominators so they all line up. So with the 2, 2, then 4, then 6. With the 6, we already have 6. With the 3, we would do 3 and then 6. So we see that the first place they line up is 6. So we're going to multiply this whole problem by 6 over 1. Okay, I'm going to write 6 over 1 with each fraction now. 6 over 1, because we're distributing to the whole equation. So 6 over 1 times 3y over 2 plus 6 over 1 times y over 6 equals 6 over 1 times 10 over 3. And then I'm going to rewrite it one more time and move the denominator of the fraction below the 6 instead to help with reducing. So for this first fraction, that would be 6 over 2 times 3y plus 6 over 6 times y equals 6 over 3 times 10. So what we did there is just that denominator, we just wrote it under the 6 for each fraction, just to help with reducing it. And then reducing 6 over 2, 6 divided by 2 is 3. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So we've just cleared out all the fractions from that equation. So now we have 3 times 3y plus 1 times y equals 2 times 10. With all those fractions now cleared out of the equation. And now let's multiply each of these pieces. So we're not really distributing, we're just multiplying since we don't have multiple things added together in the parentheses. So in this first parentheses, 3 times 3y would be 9y, 3 times 3 to get 9, plus 1 times y is 1y, equals 2 times 10, 20. And now we want to combine, so on the left side we have 9y and 1y, which combine to 10y equals 20. And last step to solve for y is divide by 10 on both sides, and we get y equals 2. Okay, now we're going to finish that decimal example from class. And just to remind you, when we have decimals, you could solve it without multiplying by anything if you would like. The method that I showed in class was clearing the decimals out of the equation, so I'm going to show that, but know that you don't have to do this. You can solve it as it is right now. So in this case, all of our decimals need to be moved one place because we have 0.5, 0.4, 0.3, and 0.2. So that means to move the decimal one place, we're going to multiply by 10. Okay, if we wanted to move it 2 places, we'd multiply by 100. 3 places, we'd multiply by 1,000. So in this case, we want to move one place, so we're going to just multiply this whole equation by 10. 10 times 0.5 is going to move the decimal once to the right. So it would be 5x. 10 times 0.4 is going to move that decimal once to the right. So that would be 4x. Sorry, I've just realized I wrote a different equation here than we had in our notes. I think it was just 0.4. Sorry about that. Just so it matches up with our notes. So 0.4 times 10 is 4. And then on the other side of the equation, 10 times 0.3 is going to move that decimal one place to the right to give 3x. And then multiplying 10 by 0.2, move the decimal once to the right to get 2. And now we have a much more normal looking equation. The first thing that we look for is we see if we can combine anything, but on the left we have 5x minus 4, which can't be combined. On the right we have 3x plus 2, which can't be combined. So now we want to move our x's. And we move them by subtracting them. I'm going to subtract the 3x from both sides. And we're subtracting them, we're moving them just because we're on different sides of the equal sign. After subtracting, we would have 2x minus 4 equals 2. Now we want to move numbers away from the x. So now the x's are moved, we're going to move numbers. And the number we need to move is this 4, negative 4. So it's subtracted, we're going to move it by adding it to both sides. We would get 2x is equal to 6. Last step to solve for x, divide by 2 on both sides. We get x is equal to 3.